I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. This is week 2 of our Keira Knightley theme month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talented actress. Tonight's selection was the 2018 film Colette.
Colette. And we had a discussion before we started this film. Who chose this?
I think I did.
I think you did too. Because the next two we're going to watch, I definitely know I selected. And usually on these jointly curated months, it's a 2 and 2.
Sometimes a 3 and 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I selected this one. I remember when this came out, and I wanted to see it based on like kind of the plot synopsis and the trailers. And so I'm pretty sure I'm the one that selected this month.
I knew very little about it, and it surprised me.
It surprised me too. It was not what I anticipated based on the trailers and what I had read about it. We should go ahead and start off by saying that this movie starts with a warning that it's made for mature audiences.
From the good people at Hulu.
Yep. So if you're not into movies made for mature audiences, this might be an episode you just go ahead and pass over.
Indeed.
We're not going to get into anything crazy, but this was a movie made for mature audiences. So if you don't intend to watch that movie, then this might not be the right episode for you. So, Nate, this was both of our first time seeing this movie. What were your first impressions?
Well, what this movie is it's a biopic about someone who I don't think either of us really knew anything about.
I knew of her.
So, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of her name. Sidonie Gabrielle Colette is a French woman known by her monosyllabously as Colette, who was a French author and woman of letters. She was also a mime, an actress, and a journalist. Colette is best remembered for her 1944 novella Gigi, which was the basis for the 1958 film and the 1973 stage production of the same name. That is, of course, the little introductory paragraph from Wikipedia. And that's what I knew her from, as I knew her from Gigi, which was a Best Picture Oscar winner, a musical with Leslie Caron. But I couldn't have told you her name. I mean, I just recognized that one, piece of work because I'd seen it.
Yeah.
Didn't love it. So I knew basically nothing about her. I had certain senses, especially early on, about what this was going to be.
Uh-huh.
And it was that and more so.
Yeah.
It's 2021. How surprising should some of this stuff have been? But this is a thing that's set in the 1890s and early 1900s. And it's very frank about certain things.
It's also set in that time frame in Paris, which was different than American sensibilities.
So there was, when I was kind of scrolling through some reviews, somebody called this a period, I think it was Roger Ebert, this is a period film. No, it couldn't have been Roger Ebert because he's dead by now. But by then. But someone had said this was a period piece that was very much ready for 2018.
Yeah.
And it is. Alternately decadent and progressive. This is the story of the liberation of a woman.
Yeah. Specifically, our Gabrielle Colette.
Played by Miss Knightley.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question.
All right.
If you had to pick one scene out of this movie to encapsulate the movie, what scene would you pick?
That I feel like I might have to ruminate on it a little bit. I guess the one that comes to mind is the party after the premiere of the play.
Okay. With
the dancing on the table, and him taking the picture of himself and the two Colettes, his wife and Claudines, and the actress who played Claudine on the stage. But I have a feeling that you have a very specific selection for this.
Yeah, I do, but for me it was, so after they've sold the country house and the publisher comes and sees Colette at the play, and offers to take her out to dinner and tells her that Willie has sold the works, and she goes back and finds Willie and confronts him. That was a very dramatic scene. That was Keira Knightley, on kind of a rant as Colette.
That probably is the scene of the movie. It's when she tells him off
that he's killed their child, and I felt like it was a very encapsulating of the entire film, because almost this entire film she's miserable with him.
Yeah. Well, it is. What's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of the right note to go out on, because it had all been building to this scene, to this confrontation, and they have confrontations throughout the film. But you notice that they often talk in veiled language. Like they have that one conversation where she has figured out that they were having an affair with the same woman.
Yeah.
And she wrote it into the next Colleen book, and they're discussing it as they sit together to edit. And they're like, well, such and such, and it's obviously alter egos.
His character name.
It's like, well, would he do that? So, no, I think he'd do this. And they're having this whole conversation in
veiled
proxy,
terms. Yeah.
and the fact that she comes out and says it is something. Which actually leads me to a question, my question for you, which is the maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So the basic plot is that Colette is this country girl who marries this guy named Willie, who's very urbane, sophisticate, from Paris, who runs a magazine and has novels and stuff published under his name, but they're written by a variety of people because my name's a brand.
Yeah.
And she really loves him, and in some ways he's very progressive to her, and I think he really does love her. But
at least initially.
It's there's a lot of push and pull in that relationship, and he certainly takes advantage in many ways. Not that he's completely like this leads to the question I'm going to ask. Do you like Willie? Do you hate him? I could never hate him.
Willie was always pretty straightforward about who he was.
Yeah, he was. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to hate him when he never really actively deceived anyone.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, yeah.
Well, he kind of did early on, but...
kind of, but even as soon as she confronts him, like, he's honest about it.
Yeah.
The part where I would hate him the most, like, the only part where you could get close to me in terms of hatred is when he's with that Meg character, you know, who's only there to be a Claudette or Claudine proxy, and that's just disturbing.
When they take their mistresses together to the country house.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, early on, where the lady, the Louisiana heiress who marries the industrialist 3 times her age, and they start socializing, and he picks up on the fact that, you know, she's interested in her, not in him.
Uh-huh.
And basically condones them having an affair. It's like, my wife, I am endorsing her running off and having this lesbian romance with this lady. And I think I'll have a romance with her too, and we'll be quiet.
Yeah, we won't tell anyone. This movie also has a bit of an ensemble cast. Well, that's kind of the wrong way to phrase it. It has a large cast. There are a large number of characters in this movie. I mean,
Dominic West is really good in it too. I know of his name, but not a lot of his work comes to mind. Fiona Shaw I knew, and almost everybody else I didn't really know.
Yeah. So you have Keira Knightley playing our lead, Colette. You have Fiona Shaw playing Sido, which is her mother, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Dominic West plays Willie. Robert Pugh plays Jules. You have Arabelle Weir playing Madame Xavier. Mate Hoffman plays Count Moffat. Ray Penthaki plays Weber. Al Weaver plays Schwab. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Virag Barane plays Lot Kinsler. Isn't that the lady from Louisiana?
No, that character is played by an actress named Eleanor Thompson, who for some reason is not coming up on the IMDb.
It'll come up. There's that many people in this.
But she's Georgie Raoul hyphenated last name.
But you have Janine Harouni plays Jean de Chavier. Jake Graff is Gaston de Chavier.
There's Eleanor.
You have Julian Wadham is Ollendorf, the publisher. Eleanor Tomlinson is Georgie Raoul Duval. You have Aisha Hart is Polaire. Denise Gao is Missy. Shannon Tarbett is Meg. I mean, this isn't even a third of the people in this movie. It just keeps going. What did you think of the production of this movie, like the settings and whatnot?
I mean, it's a nice looking film. The score actually stood out to me early in the film, and then kind of feels like it doesn't exist. It's like all kind of front loaded.
It blended pretty well throughout.
Yeah. I mean, it looks great. The beautiful countrysides. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, there's not a lot of, unless they're in the country, there's like hardly any exterior in this film. which, is a budgetary thing.
Yeah.
Because, it's expensive to show France of 120 years ago.
Yeah.
In the city, at least.
What else do you think of this on the first viewing? What else stands out to you?
I was just kind of shocked. I was a little bit shocked by and almost like awkward laughter at times in this film because it just, wait, is this happening? Wait, is this, they're going to be that direct about this? And I was just kind of felt like I had been kind of pushed back in time, and like the shockingness of what this would have been, especially back then, I had more of a sense of it than I would have thought. Like, if I had known more about what this was going to be going in, I think my reaction would have been different. But I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah. Despite it being shocking, I found it to be fairly enjoyable. It was a pleasant film.
It's solid. It kept my attention throughout. It had good performances. It was certainly interesting.
Yeah.
You're just like, what is going to happen next?
If anything, I think they wrapped it up almost a little too quick. I don't know about what your thoughts are on the ending.
It's Colette, but it's the film about that marriage.
Yeah.
And it's gripping.
I'm not seeing any budgetary numbers on this. I guess I should say I'm moving ahead into the box office stuff. I'm not seeing any budgetary numbers in IMDb. It says that it had an opening weekend in the U.S. of just a mere $161,000. Its domestic gross, though, was $5.1 million, and IMDb is stating a worldwide gross of $14.2 million. So depending on what your budget was, this, that might have been okay. And it says this was shot in Hungary primarily. So that probably keeps down on your shooting budget.
And Wikipedia does not list a budget either, which makes me think that, it's not something they really want out there, because I would be surprised if this movie made money. It's so niche, and even though they saved money with some of the location things they did, it wouldn't have been cheap to make, especially with, Keira Knightley in the lead.
Yeah. This was directed by Wash Westmoreland. Mm-hmm. Still Alice is probably his most recognizable credit.
He was co-director on The Last of Robin Hood, which I've seen.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
He also helped write this along with Richard Glatzer.
Making about this lady, like who? There's not a demand for it, because who remembers who she is? She's probably semi-remembered in France. But there is something to be said for a biopic about someone that you don't know anything about.
Well, and yet who was influential and ahead of her time and things of that nature. And how would you rate this film?
I would rate this film 3.5, which was, most of the time I was watching it, I was thinking it was a 3. But I thought that speech at the end may have been worth a half star. And, to kind of put the punctuation on what this was about. This was about this marriage running its course.
Yeah.
And, the themes talks about, I've outgrown her and I've outgrown you. And I would give this probably an 8 on the 10-star scale.
So we're pretty darn close. I would stick with 3 on the 4-star scale, but I'm also an 8 on the 10-star scale. I found this movie to be pleasant and enjoyable. Like you said, the score, I thought the score actually was good because it blended in. A lot of times if you don't notice a score, that means it's a good score. But yeah, it was pleasant. This movie is
pleasant's a weird way to describe this movie.
You're right. That's probably a bad way to describe this movie. It was enjoyable. It was
satisfying.
Yeah. Thoroughly satisfying to me, but yeah. This won a bunch of British awards. I'm not going to go too in depth into those. Here's the question of our episode. Who would you recommend this movie to?
Who would I recommend this movie to? I don't know.
I think anybody who doesn't have particular sensibilities about watching a rated R movie, like anybody who doesn't have a problem with that, I'd recommend it to.
I think in a general sense, I'm going to say people born after 1975.
That's probably relatively accurate too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is unique just because of the nature of the film and some of the content that's in it. There is a little tiny bit of nudity, but not very much. Evidently, it was at the time that this was actually taking place. Part of the reason it was so controversial, it was actually illegal in France for women to wear pants.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow. So when Colette decides to wear pants, that was a controversial decision.
It's interesting. 87% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's a decent score on Rotten Tomatoes. More consistent with our view of it versus IMDb, where it has an aggregate score of 6.7 stars, which after having seen the movie, I think is a little bit low. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a not for all audiences film.
No, I think your 1970, for people after 1975 is fairly accurate.
It's a little bit of a perplexer, but I mean, it was. I enjoyed seeing it. I'm glad I saw it.
Oh yeah.
I was considering asking you earlier, maybe we should switch this out, but I'm glad that we saw it through and saw it.
Honestly, so I guess this is our Keira Knightley theme month. To me, I more than any other film I can think of that I've seen her in so far, this I think highlights her acting ability. Granted, I have not seen a tremendous amount of her filmography, but I've seen more than a few movies with her in it. But I can't think of one off the top of my head where that scene we already described multiple times. Where she has that line of dialogue, it's captivating. It's her on the screen and it's fixed on her face, and she's delivering her lines and she's going on and it's captivating. You want to continue just watching her.
Well, she's a very solid actress. She's got a solid presence, but often, especially in the earlier part of her career, she was there to be the pretty girl.
Yeah,
and she's pretty in this, but she's not here to be the pretty girl.
Yeah,
she's here to be the shock to the system girl.
Yep.
And just a real pioneer. And this is an LGBTQ film.
Yeah.
And that story set at the time that it's set, 120 years ago, has a different kind of impact. And just the directness of it and the bluntness of it, and Missy being a transgendered person. They never use that word, but that's what she is.
Yeah.
That's when she's talking about, the first time I felt whole was when I put on my brother's pants.
I put on my brother's school uniform.
Yeah. And it's shocking, I think, mostly in a good way.
Yeah.
There's certainly some decadence in it, especially early on, whereas the country girl goes to the salon with her husband for the first time, and there's the jeweled tortoise sitting on the silver tray for no reason, just to look weird. And there's that guy in the background doing a fire trick or something like that. Like, what the heck? And the mine, and she's like, this is weird, man. And it is interesting to kind of contrast that real decadent, kind of rich, self-absorbed weirdness to the relationship between her and Missy, which would have been really weird, especially at the time. But there's a heck of a lot more substance there than the salon cloud.
Yeah, I completely agree. And how they ended up putting on their production and whatnot. And that train journey, that scene on the train was also pleasant.
That was also...
I keep using that term even though I don't... That's not what I meant, but yeah.
The pleasant is... it's the Mad Lib.
Yep. Yeah, anything else to say on this one?
No, I think we've said it.
Yep, I'm Rob.
I am Nate.
And this is Rob and Nate Record a Podcast.
We kind of rush through, like, that happens oftentimes is we're like, well, let's skip to the end.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we got to go back and give you some context.
Yeah. I liked this.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It was pleasant. I mean, yeah. But she delivers her role very well.
Mm-hmm. They also did a good job of how her look changes over time. It was very overtly in the end. But I also liked how they gradually grayed the husband's beard.
Yeah.
To show the passage of time.
Yeah. I had kind of mixed feelings about the husband, and like when he has her cut the hair, I was like, oh, come on, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she kind of adopts that and makes it her own, despite it being the Claudine look.
And it is, it's this marriage is for lack of a better word, it has a purpose. And like it was important, especially for her, but she kind of grew out of it.
Yeah.
And you kind of like she did need him. I mean, he needed her
initially,
more,
yeah.
But he was her entree to that world, and she would not have got into it without him, and would not have discovered, her talents without him.
You got any
rambling.
quips to put in here for me?
No,
I have no idea what the heck that's doing.
not my mom.
Now I got to edit that out. Okay, you ready for this?
So before we watched this movie, we watched this movie on Hulu, and a little thing came up on the screen that said this movie is for adult, mature audiences only. That's applicable.
Yeah.
I think possibly to this podcast.
Do you want me to throw out a warning?
I don't know. It's this. I'm not sure.
I think we will just state at the beginning that this movie was made for mature audiences.
It was made for mature audiences.
And so if you're not into that, then maybe don't listen to this episode.
Mm.
So, all right, I can throw that out. Otherwise, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it helps if I make sure I'm ready.
Yeah. Who are you?